The next episode of Nerd, Flicks, and Chill will start in
3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, this is Nick.
This is Carrie.
And we are Nerd, Flicks, and Chill. And today's episode is our first movie review, as we are talking about Ghostbusters.
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You shouldn't be, because I feel like everything that everybody had to say about this movie was scary enough going into it. Before we get into the actual review, I want to put a little bit of context out there, because it's a little bit of a unique situation with this movie. When this movie was first announced, it was kind of met with the groaning, skeptical internet response that you've come to expect from a lot of things these days. Later on down the line, when the cast was announced, I think some of those groans got a little bit louder because you had people chiming in on that cast, because they weren't selecting, like Megan Fox or Jennifer Lawrence. Instead, they were choosing established, talented comedic actresses like Kristen Wiig and, Melissa McCarthy and Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones. And some of the kind of groups that started to speak out are these, and I'm doing air quotes when I say this, men's rights groups, which that's a real thing, people, believe it or not. And you had these groups, these men's rights groups, that were saying that the film is kind of an attempt to sweep under the rug the original film, and that this new thing would just be some man-hating movie pushing a feminist agenda and all this stuff. So there was a lot of bad press that was kind of surrounding this, or at least a lot of angry keystrokes being made online. Then the first trailer came out, and that trailer was met with a pretty large backlash of negativity. It actually became one of the most disliked videos ever on YouTube, and partly because that trailer was not a great trailer by any means, but also due to this kind of swirling misogynistic online culture that chose this movie as its sticking point. There was even one critic, I don't remember what exactly his name was, but he reviews like video games, and he decided that he wasn't going to review the film, and he was taking a stand. So you initially had this sense, even after the first trailer came out, that the battle lines were being drawn, and you had thousands of people that went on to IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, and rated the film a 1 without having ever seen it, to kind of, I guess, artificially lower the score. Then you had feminist groups that were encouraging people just to go into the theaters and see the movie and support it. And then we had some reviews that have actually had the words "suck it haters" in the reviews. We had some folks on Reddit that were contemplating boycotts and trying to find other ways to slander the film electronically. And now the film has come out. We are on the other side of it. I believe both of our childhoods remain intact.
And how's your manhood?
It's doing well. It's doing well.
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
So, all of that aside, we're going to give you our honest thoughts on the film, separate from all of the kind of misogynistic nonsense and debate that took place in the months leading up to its release. So, we're going to rate the film, and we're going to give it 1 of 3 ratings. And those ratings are screen it, which means go see it in the theater, stream it, which means stream it at home, wait a few months, or leave it, which means don't go see it at all. So screen it, stream it, or leave it. So, Carrie, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, boy.
How did you rate Ghostbusters?
I am rating it a stream it. And we will get into the details of why. And just a heads up, this will be a spoiler-filled review. We are going to fully discuss details of the movie. So if you don't want that spoiled, I think we can be so bold as to put in a time code in our description as to when you should stop listening. We'll be sure to do that. But for now, I will say stream it. And the reason why I say that is there are things about this movie that I really liked, things about this movie that I didn't really care for, but the things that I really liked, I don't think were enough to say you have to rush out to the theater and go and see this. I think you would be just as satisfied to wait a little bit and just watch it in the comfort of your own home. I don't think you have to run out to the theater, but I do think it's a movie that's worth seeing. That's my short, quick review.
All right. So for me, I am rating this film as a screen it. I think you should go to your movie theater and see this movie. I will say, just kind of right off the bat, no, it is not as good as the original Ghostbusters, but it's not as horrible as many of the people on the internet hoped it would be.
That's
I
incredibly
think this
true. Yeah.
I think this movie is funnier than I was expecting it to be. I think it's overall better than I was expecting it to be. It has a lot of jokes. They don't all hit, but when it does hit, it works really well. And Kate McKinnon is just awesome in this movie. She steals the entire movie. You can't take your eyes off of her when she's on the screen. There's some really funny action in there. There's lots of callbacks to the original Ghostbusters film. And all that to me made it a really entertaining, escapist bit of movie fun. So I am saying screen it.
All right, so I think from here on out, if you have not seen the movie, tread lightly because we are going to go into the nitty gritty of what we did like and what we didn't like and why.
You just Heisenberged the audience.
Did I?
Told them to tread lightly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
You missed a,
Yes,
you missed a,
yes, I
missed a
did.
Breaking Bad joke.
Dang it.
Come on.
I know, slacker.
All right, so let's talk about the things about the film that we liked. You probably have less of these things than I do, but where do you want to start? What did you like about this film?
I guess I'm just going to expand a little bit more on what you said on your short review is that the cast. I thought the cast was excellent. These ladies I thought worked really, really well together. You can tell they had a lot of really good chemistry, and I will bet you that the outtakes of this movie are probably just as good as what made it on screen. And I'm also really curious to know how much of what made it on screen uh, were improv moments because we've got some really hard-hitting comedic ladies and that are all very good at improv. And I want to point out as well something that you had mentioned regarding the original film and with people that were against the casting of these ladies, that there wasn't like a Megan Fox, Jennifer Lawrence type person. Well, think back to the original cast. They weren't exactly handsome leading men either. They were all comedic actors. So I think their
You don't think Dan
casting.
Aykroyd's sexy?
No,
No?
he's a no,
If
no.
Dan Aykroyd showed up to your place with a bottle of that Skull vodka?
Actually, I have a bottle of that Skull vodka in my living room, and it's signed by Dan Aykroyd. I met him a year ago.
Likely story. Is Dan Aykroyd at your place right now? Can you please put him on?
Shh, no, just go sit down and suck on your maple syrup. I was trying to think of something. Eat your poutine. Something Canadian in there.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I derailed you there.
What the hell? That was funny. No,
Bill
all
Murray's
the
ugly. Go on.
no, all the original cast, they're all comedic actors. They're not leading men. I mean, that was part of their charm. That's what made that movie. So I think the casting is it balanced, If they were to have cast like Megan Fox and Jennifer Lawrence and women like that, I would have been really, really disappointed. That would have been incredibly misogynistic, I think. So
Sure, I
I think
agree.
this casting was wonderful. I think again they had wonderful chemistry. I think the writing for them was really, really good, and they were the standout. I loved Kate McKinnon. She is so quirky, and I couldn't stop watching her anytime she was on screen, even when she doesn't have any lines. Just
Yeah.
the way that she reacts to things, it was just a delight. I thought Melissa McCarthy really stood out as well. I thought they were all really strong. Kristen Wiig, she is a wonderful comedic actress, but she is doing so well at playing the straight man here
Right.
to all the other ladies, but still has incredible comedic timing. Yeah, I thought they were wonderful.
I totally agree on the cast. I thought they were great. I think uh, there's with Kate McKinnon. I think one of the things that makes her really stand out is she is allowed to be her naturally funny self, and she's not as contained um, by the kind of straight man script that they wrote for somebody like Melissa McCarthy, who you is playing more of a character, whereas Kate McKinnon's really just kind of got a little bit of more free reign to do her own thing. Leslie Jones as well. She's doing a lot of like Leslie Jones stuff in there, and that's what people like to see. So I thought that was a pretty good decision on the part of Paul Feig to be able to go in and just kind of allow those characters to have some free reign. You still need to have a little bit of character development. You need to have a little bit of backstory, but they did a pretty good job in kind of breaking that stuff up. The expanded cast for this movie is actually quite excellent. Going into it, I only knew about the four leads and Chris Hemsworth, who is very funny in this movie, by the way. But there are a lot of other people in here that are really, really great. Charles Dance, the guy who played Tywin Lannister, is in this movie. How
Yes!
awesome is
It
that?
was
Andy
so
Garcia,
cool. Yes.
yeah, Andy Garcia playing the mayor. So you have all these different actors that are popping up. The guy who played Gabe on The Office, and he's on Silicon Valley now, his name I can't remember, in the very first scene,
Yeah.
which is really very funny. So I thought the cast of this film was really, really great, and Kate McKinnon is kind of the breakout star of this thing too.
I would agree. I think, again, I don't know the actor's name, Gabe from The Office. That's at the very beginning of the movie. I thought that scene was hilarious. And I think that scene really kind of sets up the humor for what we're getting ready to go into. He is what I'm trying to remember some of his lines that he says. He's kind of explaining the former occupant of this mansion that these people are getting a tour through, and he says something about a face bidet. And then there was another item that he mentioned, which I can't remember right now. But then he motions to a room. He says, "Well, this is the room where P.T. Barnum got his idea to enslave elephants." And I thought it was really funny, and it kind of just set up what we are, getting ready to head into, the type of humor that we're getting ready to um, have presented to us in this movie. And I thought they maintained that. The humor was really good. I thought it was a lot of witty stuff. There was a couple lowbrow moments,
Yeah,
but not many. I was expecting more, actually. I was expecting some more lowbrow potty humor stuff, and I think there were maybe only two things that I could think of in the entire movie. One of them I thought was really kind of a low blow, but um, yeah, I mean only twice that I can really recall.
yeah, and I think that opening scene, really, you're right. It did establish the kind of humor that the film was going to have, and just the concept of a face bidet makes me laugh. Just the words "face bidet" are hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Um, I love that. Actually, that opening scene kind of reminded me of like the pre-show at the Haunted Mansion,
Mm-hmm.
at Disney. But after that scene, when you first get the opening logo and it cuts to Kristen Wiig's character, for those first couple minutes there, as we're getting the introduction of Kristen Wiig to Melissa McCarthy, I was a little bit nervous there because I feel like their dialogue was a little bit clunky.
Yeah.
But then Kate McKinnon comes on screen, and she'd been sitting in the room the entire time, and it just like that, it just changed, and I just thought, man, this is great.
Well, I don't think the clunkiness really bothered me because it was supposed to kind of feel uncomfortable. I don't know. I mean, they kind of went into what the history was between the two of them, and I don't. I don't think they really expanded on. It seemed to me like there was some kind of a falling out between the two of them or something. Or I mean, I know that they parted ways because Kristen Wiig's character was going a bit more academic and serious, and she was kind of separating herself from the paranormal stuff. But it seemed to be that there was some kind of tension or something between the two of them, and I don't think they ever really expanded on that. But I think it was meant to feel a bit awkward, and it sounds like it worked because that's how it felt to you. But yeah, the first scene with Kate McKinnon, that's the one where I thought there was like the kind of lowbrow moment. But I thought it was very funny to set up the fact that, they were playing a prank on Kristen Wiig so that then when they immediately go to the mansion to do their investigating, that, at first she thinks it's a joke. And so that was a setup for that scene there. But yeah, I think Kate McKinnon, again, I can't stop singing her praises. There's just so many little moments and so many times that she doesn't even have to say a word and she steals the scene.
Yeah, she steals the scene without ever having a line of dialogue. And there's also in that opening scene, there's that joke about like the wonton soup.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that joke is a little bit kind of weak. But then I thought it actually paid itself off in a really funny way
Yes.
when later on they end up renting the space above the restaurant. And
Well,
she's
and they
like, it still
kept
took you an hour.
yeah, yes. And they kept that was kind of a continuous joke throughout the movie, even through to the credits. They kept
Right.
going with that, and it was like she was just it's either too much or too little. She was never satisfied with what they were giving, and I liked that
And I
little
found myself
bit.
laughing at Chris Hemsworth so much.
An aquarium is a submarine for fish. It was
Oh,
hilarious.
yes. Yeah. And he was like the kind of bimbo eye candy.
Yeah, the stereotypical dumb receptionist. I thought it was really funny, and I actually kind of even like the exchange between Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, where Kristen Wiig is just infatuated by him the entire time, and Melissa McCarthy, like, she's just like, no, what are you talking? No, what are you talking about? Like, she just doesn't even see it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really
Uh,
funny.
and what is it with Chris Hemsworth showing up in these reboots or sequels or whatever it is? He was
Right?
in Star Trek that
Yeah,
J.J. Abrams did a few years back. He was in that Vacation movie, the Ed Helms Vacation. I guess it's a sequel. And now he's been in this one. It's kind of
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
And
Well,
wasn't his brother in Independence Day?
oh, the two of them, they're raking it in.
Yeah, sequels and reboots and superhero movies to
Yeah.
your face. They just keep
Yes,
bringing it, those guys.
that's right.
And there's a lot of other really great bits of comedy throughout the movie. There's a lot of jokes. There's a high volume of jokes in this movie, and not all of them land. And the analogy that I would use is a boxer who uh, just likes to throw a lot of punches. He knows they're not all going to land, but he knows that if he lands enough, he'll be successful. And I think that's the theory that was in practice in this film.
Just throw it and see what sticks.
Exactly.
Well, I think the jokes gave you a little bit of everything for everyone. I think kids are really going to like this movie, but I think it's a movie that parents are also going to be able to go with their kids and they will be able to enjoy it as well. There's some jokes in here that will go over the kid's head, that the parents will be able to chuckle at. So I think there's a good balance in there.
Now, I will say that I loved the tech upgrade that the Ghostbusters received in this movie.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
have
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of very cool, fun, different weapons that they use.
Yeah, I really like how they played with that. It wasn't just the proton pack. It's like we're going to take this same technology, but we're going to put it into all these different types of things. There was kind of like a grenade. There was like
That grenade is cool.
that was cool, and there was kind of like a boxing glove type thing, or like a brass knuckles, I guess you could call it, type thing. And then what else? There was
Like a
something else.
Ghostbusters power glove.
Yeah, like the power glove thing. And they had the smaller guns, not just the big, proton pack. They had some smaller ones as well, like a pistol type thing. So yeah, I like the fact that they explored their options.
I love their back alley weapons test.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, I
what
like
was
the fact that every time they step out there, they've got something. And those ghost busting grenade things are sweet. I think those are awesome.
That was a good idea. It was really cool. I liked the line when Melissa McCarthy's character was she had she was just going all over the place. It's like, oh, she's doing her impersonation of a deflating balloon. I thought that was really funny. A lot of really good lines. Let's see, a lot of callbacks to the original movie. Some subtle, some not so subtle. I liked a lot of the subtlety. I liked the fact that they showed the original firehouse. It and then ended up there
Yes,
later on in the
which
movie.
the original firehouse, the rent is really high.
Yes, it was like in the
What did
twenty
they say,
thousands,
25 grand a month?
something like that. Whew, a lot.
I was going to say, I just think that's a really fun reference to the way New York has changed between 1984 and 2016.
Do they mention the rent in the original movie at all?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
I don't either. What else? Oh, a nice little Harold Ramis tribute very quickly at the beginning of the movie. There's a flash if you happen to look away for just a moment to grab some popcorn or something, you might have missed it because it is quite fast on screen. He's a bust in the university, a bust of his head. I actually thought it was very sweet.
Yeah, we also do see Melissa McCarthy with the flyer that says, "If you see something, say something." And then you realize later on that she ends up reworking it to "If there's something strange in the neighborhood." I
Yes.
thought that was really really funny. That made me laugh probably more than I should have.
But it was funny though because she just kind of it was almost just in passing that she said it too, where she was like, "If there's something strange," and she's kind of like walking away, leaving the scene a little bit. So that was a little bit more subtle. But yeah, then some things that were really, really obvious and in your face. I mean, we have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, in a sense, that's in it. Um, I guess he could be one of the cameos because Slimer is in it as well. And then the original cast is in it, except for Rick Moranis. I think he was glaringly not in the film, but all of the original
He is
Ghostbusters.
retired.
Well, that's true, but all of the original Ghostbusters and even Sigourney Weaver make appearances. Oh, and Annie Potts makes the original receptionist for the Ghostbusters is in it as well.
Yes, at the hotel.
Yeah, the front desk. I thought it was really interesting in the showing that I saw. Out of all of the cameos, Ernie Hudson and Sigourney Weaver were the two that actually got applause when people saw them on screen. The other ones, nobody said anything. They might have gasped or were like, "Oh," or said something audible, but they actually got applause in my theater.
I'll talk about the cameos in a second because I actually only liked one of them. But one of the things I noticed that was different about this film versus the other ones is the other Ghostbusters films were, you know, one big kind of like monster or villain at the end, and this one seemed to have a lot. Like these Ghostbusters in the climax of this film did a lot of stuff. They did a lot of damage. I actually like that choice. I like the idea of having all these different things for them to kind of have to overcome. So the Ghostbusters in this movie are much busier than I think the Ghostbusters in the previous two movies were.
Well, I think in the original movie, there was a lot of stuff happening down on the ground. I remember there were shots where you saw Slimer. There were shots where there was a cab driver that his head turned and he looked like a skeleton, and there was a lot of stuff that was happening down on the ground and in the city, but they were up on top and they were dealing with that. But then after, they only had their one goal was to take care of the ghost that was up there, and that took care of everything else. Where this one, there was, we had the building and there was all this stuff swirling around the building, but they were all down on the ground. And so they were battling all that stuff down on the ground. And I kind of liked that as well. I liked being able to see them in action. I liked them having to do more than just focus in on one point. So there was a lot more action that was involved with it. Now I have some criticisms of that scene, technically, but I guess we'll get into our big criticisms in just a moment.
All right, so we get the big climactic finale. Ghostbusters win the day, and there is an end credit scene that, to me, the end credit scene is more of an homage. It might be an attempt to set up a sequel, but I just don't know why they'd go there. But I did think the end credits themselves were pretty funny. You do have the Chris Hemsworth dance sequence.
I thought that was really weird. During the finale, when his character kind of freezes everybody in that like Saturday Night Fever type pose, I was kind of expecting some kind of dance, something to happen, which I thought, please don't do that. That's going to be really silly, but why would you have the people pose in this way? Because that's just really random. So it seems like they felt the need to cut it, but yet keep it and let's put it in the end credits. I thought that was a little strange, but I think it was a good idea to leave it out of the movie.
So I think we've covered everything that we liked about the film, but let's get into some of the stuff that we did not like as much. So I feel like you'll probably have a few more criticisms than I do, so I'm going to kick it over to you and let you start out with what some of your criticisms in the movie were.
A lot of my criticism, or my big glaring criticism, I guess, is the effects in the movie. I wish there were more practical effects in it. Now, I will say this, there were some practical effects in the movie. There's some cool stuff that they did with the very first apparition that we see, and then quite a bit of them in that finale scene where they actually had actors or stunt people wearing these suits that had these LED lights on them, so that gave that really electric blue color, and they really enhanced it further with CG, which I thought lent itself really well with the fight, especially at the end with Kate McKinnon, where she's fighting everybody. But I really wish there were more practical effects that were in there. Slimer, for example, I do know that there was a company called the Character Shop that did actually create a full-fledged animatronic Slimer that was kind of sort of used in the film. They used it when he was driving the car, and it was something that a person actually wore. Or the driver would be wearing this, and then it was controlled remotely. But then they completely CG'd over the entire Slimer and really changed the makeup of it. So they really just used the shape of it and maybe some of the large movements as far as the body goes, but then any of your finer movements like the eyes and the mouth and everything completely redone, completely CG'd. So I almost don't even include that as a practical effect. It was really just kind of a dummy, is what the designers used it for, which is a shame because the animatronic actually looks really cool. So, and a lot of the other effects too, again, in that finale scene, the CG almost just looks too crisp and clean and perfect. I think CG is best used when it is subtle and undetected, or it's used to enhance something. subtly. I think almost the entirety of that finale scene was just, again, too perfect. It looked like there was just a huge Instagram filter over everything. Everything was completely smooth and shiny and bright. And, this is a battle. This is gritty. It's in the middle of New York City. Not everything should be so bright and neon colored and perfect, which I think is one of the reasons why I really liked, the original Ghostbusters. Yes, I know it was made in the 80s and they're kind of creating a lot of their effects as they were going on. But I think it gave it a sense of realism. And I think there was a lot, it was just too much CG in this movie that just looked too fake and too perfect. And that's my big, huge criticism of it. I wish there was a little bit more grit and realism to it.
Well, I would only push back on that a little bit because I actually thought some of the visual effects looked really, really good. I would definitely totally agree that there does need to be more practical effects, and I agree with that across the board. I think movies in general need to be having more creature design and more workshop stuff and more practical effects coming out of them. But to me, a lot of the CGI stuff actually did work pretty well. I do kind of get what you're saying though about like how kind of pristine Times Square looked and kind of how um, like I don't know shiny and crisp everything looked in Times Square. I can totally get there on that, but I do think a lot of the CG work was actually really quite good. Like I like that kind of weird dragon thing. I like the electric chair inmate. I like that very first apparition they saw, but they see. But I know you're saying that there's kind of a practical element to that too. So to me, a lot of that stuff, I agree that there's a lot of it, but it wasn't all bad.
No, it wasn't. And I will say this, the one that stood out the most to me, that I thought was the most effective, that looked the absolute best, was the mannequin. The mannequin that was in the theater was so well done. I really, really liked that. That to me looked better than all the other ones because it looked real. It was so well done.
One of my criticisms that I had for this movie was the amount of product placement. And if you go back and look at the 1984 Ghostbusters, there's a lot of product placement in there. Like you get product placement for, Twinkie, of course, which had a pretty large piece of exposition as, in the form of product placement. And there's different product placement um, for that film, Coca-Cola and Cheez-Its and stuff like that. So it's not new to this Ghostbusters. However, when Kate McKinnon literally stops a scene to eat some Pringles, you're like, man, this is pretty fucking gratuitous, isn't it?
It really, really was. I didn't have a problem with some of the stuff in the original Ghostbusters, like the Twinkie. I mean, at least it had exposition, it had purpose for being mentioned, for being in there. It wasn't just an aside, and the thing with Kate McKinnon eating the Pringles, it was really, really gratuitous, and there was no reason for it other than placement and comedic value, I guess, because it's a funny moment. But yeah, that was a little obvious. Although there was something that you mentioned earlier that I really like regarding pizza.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The fact that they are New Yorkers, this is taking place in New York, and they are eating the most generic of pizzas possible. They are eating Papa John's pizza. What New
Yeah, that
Yorker is going to eat Papa John's pizza?
nobody. That's what makes it so ridiculous. That's what makes it stand out. Like I'm not one of these people that has like a keen eye for product placement. I generally try to ignore it, but there are movies where it slaps you directly in the face. Man of Steel. And this was one where a couple instances of product placement did. And I mean, they just Sony'd the fuck out of this movie. I mean, I know it's a Sony film, but man, there's a lot of Sony shit in this movie. Like the big Blu-ray sign and, Times Square and The cameras are Sony, and they just Sony'd up that whole fucking place, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the Times Square thing didn't necessarily bother me because Times Square is like one gigantic commercial overload of product placement, whether you're in a movie or not. So that one didn't bother me so much. But yeah, everything else in the movie, it is incredibly gratuitous and not subtle at all. But yeah, the CG stuff I think is my glaring thing. There's some writing things that I didn't really like. I guess character things. I didn't really buy into the whole villain guy. I thought that was really weak. So
Yeah, I agree.
he was somebody who was, I mean, they didn't even really go into it. I mean, it was just kind of a one line said thing where, he was bullied and made fun of. So it didn't make sense to me. They didn't really explore it enough to have it make any sense. So I didn't buy it. I didn't really get it.
I'm totally with you on the underdeveloped villain. Although I will say that is something that we tend to get a lot of from the Ghostbusters films, because three films, three underdeveloped villains. In the first movie, the villain's off screen most of the time. In the second movie, the villain is a painting and some pink sludge. Uh, so they have a history with underdeveloped villains, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just the story's not about them, about the villains so much. But I mean, I agree that there were some script issues. To me, the cameos didn't work. I thought this movie could stand on its own without the cameos.
I'm torn on the cameos. I mean, they didn't necessarily bother me, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It didn't need them, and it almost kind of removed you from it. But whatever. I mean, does that mean that the original cast and everybody's on board with it? Is that supposed to be their blessing and their passing of the proton pack to this new generation of Ghostbusters? Maybe, I don't know. Um,
Well, I mean, like, the Bill Murray cameo is utterly pointless. That character has no impact on the film at all. Doesn't even need to be there. It's actually like 5 minutes of wasted screen time that could have gone to something else. Dan Aykroyd's cameo is about 30 seconds. I just don't care because I'm not the world's biggest Aykroyd fan. Ernie Hudson's I thought was kind of predictable in a way that I was not super comfortable with. But I didn't mind that one. The only one that I really liked was the Sigourney Weaver cameo
yeah, I
and
mean,
Annie Potts. I mean, come on.
yeah. Well, Annie Potts was perfect. The Sigourney Weaver one I thought was, funny. It was okay. The Ernie Hudson one I actually thought was great. I thought it was perfect. The Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray. The Bill Murray one was just silly. Yeah, that character wasn't needed at all.
Why could Bill Murray have not played the mayor of New York?
Oh, that would have been fun. That would have been fun.
I know. They should let me cast these movies.
That's right. But no, speaking of the mayor, though, I thought it was really funny. There were a lot of um, other pop culture references throughout this movie, and one of them involving the mayor I thought was really funny, where she's trying to Kristen Wiig's character is trying to warn the mayor, Andy Garcia, and she's like, "Don't be like the mayor in Jaws." I just thought that was really funny.
I
Um,
thought that was great too.
so I mean, a lot of pop
And
culture references.
I like the way Andy Garcia is super pissed about it too.
Yeah, he didn't like that. Which I thought was great. There are a lot of nods to other movies throughout the movie. So again, I think there's a lot of humor in here that kids will like, but there are little things that the adults will be able to pick up on and that they'll be able to get it as well. So that's why I'm so torn on the movie. There's a lot of things that I really like. The stuff that I don't like might not bother a lot of people, like, my nitpickiness with the effects, but that's only because I know a lot of our listeners don't know my background and whatnot, but I'm a huge proponent of practical effects. So a lot of the CG effects overdone to me really kind of tips the scales. So that's kind of why I'm a little wishy-washy on it.
Well, I think from a script perspective, I wish it was just a little bit tighter. Like, we don't really get a sense of the rules of this universe, like how Kristen Wiig's character is able to dispatch the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man ghost balloon with a Swiss Army knife. Like, I don't quite understand the rules of this universe
That's
that they're
true.
playing in.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's a really good point because then you have Kate McKinnon's character who, is fighting through all those apparitions, pilgrims and such. That's not very Puritan of you. I don't think that was her line. That was Kristen Wiig's line. But anyway, so she's dispatching through all these apparitions, and after she takes them out, they don't, explode into ectoplasm, which I don't think they even say the word ectoplasm in the movie at all. But they're laying on the
Hmm.
street, kind of like just corpses or bodies or dead spirits, whatever you would call that, which I thought was kind of odd that they were just laying on the ground.
The Ghostbusters films themselves have never really given us um, they've never really given us the consequences of what like the whole ghost thing actually means.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure. I guess if I was to be super picky, if I was to put on my cinematic picker of nits hat, I would wonder what is the overall negative aspect to the ghosts. Like, I guess in the first movie we get the idea that it's like some sort of like release hell on earth kind of thing. But the ghosts themselves, what damage do they really do?
Yeah, other than scaring people.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm
I
not
mean, like, yeah,
sure.
we know what like Gozer does, and
Yeah, I
but
don't.
all Slimer does is eat hot dogs.
That's right. Apparently, there was a backstory that we were supposed to see in this movie for Slimer, and they ended up cutting it for some reason. So that was something that I did read heading into the movie.
I would be curious to see a director's cut of this movie because I read an interview with Paul Feig, and he had said that the first cut of this movie was 4 hours long.
Holy crap!
Yeah, which I only wonder what they cut. I mean, I also would assume that a lot of cuts, kind of even going back to what you're saying about the script, a lot of the cuts are because of the way the movie is filmed, and you have so many potential ad libs that are in there that it becomes like a find and replace where if you're the editor and the director and you're trying to pick which take you like, you have 40 different jokes to choose from, and you can almost make a different movie because you have so many different takes. But I'd be very interested to see what else was in that like director's cut of the movie.
Yeah, it does feel like there are some things that are a little disjointed. There's some weird editing things in the movie. Like there was a scene between Kate McKinnon and Melissa McCarthy, and they are listening to Kristen Wiig talk, and then the camera will show Kristen Wiig talking, and then it cuts to Kate McKinnon and Melissa McCarthy, and it's just a reaction shot, and it shows Kate McKinnon turning to look at Melissa McCarthy, and she might say something, Melissa McCarthy, and then they cut back to Kristen Wiig, and it cuts back to the two of them, and again, and then Kate McKinnon turns and looks at Melissa McCarthy again, and then it cuts back to Kristen Wiig again, and you think, okay, things happen in threes, so they're gonna cut to them a third time, and then Kate McKinnon probably gonna do something really wacky, but then they never do anything. So that just seemed kind of odd, like it was a setup that didn't go anywhere. There's some scripting things or some story things that seems a little disjointed, like I said too, with the villain and his backstory, that I don't think we didn't get at all. So it feels like there's something missing. It feels like there's something missing between the relationship of Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy's character. So yeah, it feels like there's a lot of stuff that got left on the cutting room floor, and I'm always curious to find out, behind the scenes stuff. So I'm really curious to see what comes about after this movie is released to DVD, Blu-ray, streaming, whatnot, to see what kind of extras they allow for and what kind of things that were cut, what they discuss, because I am curious about that always.
So I don't think either you or I would say that this rises to the level of the first Ghostbusters, but I wanted to ask you, do you think this movie is as good as or better than Ghostbusters 2?
I would say it's better.
Yeah, I think it's significantly better than Ghostbusters 2. I saw Ghostbusters 2 on TV the other night. That movie's not very good at all. One of the things, though, I do want to just kind of touch on is how important it is to have films with female protagonists because, as you start to see photographs, I mean, that have been kind of coming in and you've seen them online of people that are taking their kids to the movies. You're seeing little girls dressed up as Ghostbusters now. Like, man, female protagonists are super important. Super important. And we're getting a lot of them now, which is awesome.
I agree. I think it's great. I would have loved something like this when I was a kid, but I'm really looking forward to the day where it's not considered a trend.
Yeah, I mean that would be great, but I just don't think that's going to happen for a while. I just see that I think this brought out a lot of ugliness. This movie that really did not need to to be. I think this film brought out a lot of the kind of I don't know the cruelty and misogyny that kind of exists within the internet culture. It kind of reminded me of some of that GamerGate stuff that went around, and uh, it just kind of an interesting thing the way that a movie kind of transcended being a movie and became a topic of kind of a social justice conversation.
I mean, are guys that intimidated or that feel that threatened that they have to gang up? And I don't understand it. I just I don't understand the how they feel threatened by it, or how this movie ruins anybody's childhood, or um come on, people. If this movie ruins your childhood, then you have bigger issues.
Exactly. No, you're 100% correct. Uh, I didn't understand when people said it about George Lucas either with the Star Wars prequels. Like I didn't like the prequels, but like my childhood's still solid.
Oh, yeah. I think the prequels suck, but it didn't tarnish my love of Star Wars or my childhood at all. It just took away a couple hours of my life that I'll never get back.
So let me ask you another question.
Okay.
Do you feel that this film was promoting a feminist agenda, or that it
No.
was man hating in any way?
No, not at all. No, I don't I don't think it's man hating at all. Just because your leads are all female, that I mean, they're not even the same characters. They don't even give them the same names. It's almost like this movie is taking place in an alternative universe or something. I mean, it pays homage to the original movie, and it takes some of the motivation and some of the content of the first movie, but not really. I mean, the overall arc, in a very broad sense, kind of resembles the first movie, but like I said, they're not even the same characters. They don't have the same names. They're not even the same personalities. They're not even the same, how they all come together isn't, completely the same. So I don't think it has anything to do with any man bashing at all. I mean, yeah, you have Helmsworth's character is kind of a dumb receptionist, but they don't hate on him. They support him, and they hire him, and they're nurturing him, and they keep him on even though he is dumb, and they kind of make some jokes at his expense. But they don't insult him at all. So I don't think there's anything man-hating at all about this movie, just because the lead
It,
characters are females.
it's funny because one of the criticisms I had read was, I guess somebody had a problem with the fact that towards the end of the movie, they take the proton packs and they shoot the ghost right in the balls, basically saying that it was some sort of like feminist message. And I was thinking to myself, sure, you could say that if you want, but like, do you remember in the original Ghostbusters where Dan Aykroyd gets a blowjob from a ghost? Because that happens.
Yes. Yeah. And
So
how many guys movies, pretty much every single guy movie has to have some kind of a joke or something about getting hit in the balls. I mean, come on.
I just think that people tend to kind of um, allow their nostalgia to kind of blind them to certain criticisms of the things that they are nostalgic about. Like the original Ghostbusters has a lot of shit wrong with it. Just like every John Hughes movie has a lot of shit wrong with it when you go back and take a look at it. That's
Mhm.
a topic for a different time that always gets people mad at me. But um, you know, so I think like if you can have like a Ghostbuster like fucking a ghost, you can damn sure have them like shooting one on the balls. I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. But what I don't like is just the kind of like ignorant rhetoric, the desire to hate a film before it comes out, to be vitriolic towards people who give a film a positive review, or to brand somebody as one thing or another for giving it a negative review. Um, I just think that this particular film got way too much attention for all the wrong reasons.
But you know what? I think all of that attention worked against all of the people who were trying to have all of these negative campaigns against it. I think it drew up a lot of attention that it maybe otherwise wouldn't have received, and it got a lot of people really curious. And I think it will drive a lot more people to go and see it to see what all the hype is about. And, overwhelmingly, so far, the response has been incredibly positive. So I think it worked the completely opposite way of what all of these haters online were attempting to do.
Well, and the vitriol got so bad they worked it into the movie for fuck's sake. Like they addressed it in the film. They took like YouTube comments from the trailer and worked them into the movie.
Yeah, and I thought that was really smart and proactive and interesting, and I'm kind of glad that they did it. I thought it was good.
I agree. And again, just to kind of reiterate what my thoughts on it were, I thought that in spite of some things that I've talked about in my criticisms, again, I think it is much funnier and much better than I expected it to be. It's a breakout role for Kate McKinnon, and that's why I said this was a screen it.
And there were a lot of things about this movie that I enjoyed. I thought the cast was, again, I echo your sentiments. The cast was a real standout, especially Kate McKinnon, of course. Um, but one of the things that's really going to draw me to the movies are really big effects. And I like to see big effects movies in the theater. I don't think the effects in this movie are that spectacular, and not something you need to see in the theater. I think you will be able to enjoy this just as well at home. So I say stream it. You can go ahead and wait. You don't have to rush out for this one. But definitely see it.
All right, so now you know what we think, but we want to hear what you think. So hit us up on Twitter at NerdFlixChill and on Facebook under the same name, and let us know your thoughts on this Ghostbusters film. That's all we have for you today. Be on the lookout for more reviews and more generally speaking coming very soon. And as always, may the force be with you, because the night is dark and full of terrors.